It can be tempting to think that learning requires studying techniques or productivity hacks, but really none of us needs any of that to remember the lyrics to our favorite song, or to know the difference between the B'nai Gesserit and the Fremen. That's because I think the problem of how to learn is primarily a problem of motivation. I'm a developer advocate as my day job, but I've lucked into that position without ever having been a developer. I'm a software performance engineer by trade, but I've had zero formal education in IT ever. I landed a Dutch-speaking job 3 months after starting to learn the language in a different country entirely with nobody to speak Dutch with, and I uprooted my entire life because of it. I built this YouTube channel before I even knew how to be normal on camera. In this video, I'm going to talk about the principles that I've used to cultivate a lifestyle of learning things I really had no business in learning, and I'm going to show you a few examples of how I used Obsidian to help me do that. Principle number 1 is to make it fun. I believe you can't really make people do something that they don't want to do, and that includes yourself. So I'm a big believer in following my interests, even if that means I learn weird things. I like to start learning even without a plan, because that's the real test of whether or not I'm passionate about something. For example, when I was in the US, I started learning ASL, even though I really had no business in learning that. I didn't know anybody from the deaf community, but ever since then, I've been able to communicate with people actually all over the world, because ASL is probably the most popular one that is taught. And I don't regret that for anything, even though I haven't really done anything productive per se with it. I think that there are a lot of things like that that just give you joy. So go with it. Along with that, though, is that you should be able to stop learning something and feel no shame. For example, I've learned Mandarin before. At one point, I could speak and write it to at least like B1 fluency, and that's pretty much all gone. And I don't know if I ever will get it back. But you should be able to do things like that, because if you only ever learn something, if you think you're going to remember it forever, then you may not be learning as much as you might think. And that's why following your interest is so important, because if you're so excited about something, what does it matter that you're going to forget it in a few weeks or a few years? Another thing you can do is to improve serendipity using tools like Obsidian. In Obsidian, I use plugins like Excalidraw, Excalibrain, and DataView to kind of pull in a lot of ideas from different sections of my life. This is one of the reasons why I like to have as few vaults as possible, because it increases the chances of collision. I think collision is a good thing. For example, it wasn't until I was reading a tweet about somebody from the PKM community that I was able to relate that to my current work interest of coding and software engineering, and realized that coding and writing are converging. Coding is becoming more like writing. It's acquiring a syntax that is more heavily abstracted and more human readable, while writing is becoming more syntactic, more like how machines think. The proliferation of Markdown and other markup languages means that to be an online writer these days, you're going to have to learn a little bit of code. So that's an interesting insight that I might not have put together if I didn't have both of these thoughts in different fields in the same vault. Another example of a crossover that I experienced recently is the realization that a lot of the same things that I do to improve application performance can be used to improve personal or team performance as well, or productivity. So I posted something on Mastodon about it and got some feedback as well from other people about the similarities between humans and computers. I was writing things about having multiple workers and multi-threading and parallelism, things along the lines of software and tech. And then Obsidian was showing me in the backlinks something that I'd written about strategies for worker placement games. Then I just started to think about the similarities between work and play, and then also just personal productivity versus team productivity versus application productivity. And having those backlinks there really prompts me to consider connections between things I probably wouldn't have put together. Another thing that makes it fun for me is listening for passion. I love when I find someone who's super passionate about something that I know nothing about and is so different or seemingly different from my own interests and experiences. Recently, I've been talking to Andy Pillane, who as it happens is my dungeon master for one of my D&D games, and he is a designer. So I'm not into design at all, and yet his passion in design helped me think about play in a different way. He recommended this book called The Rules We Break, which I read, and using a service called Readwise, by the way, if you want to try out Readwise, readwise.io/Nicole, and then I got those highlights from Readwise into Obsidian. Then I, based on those highlights, put together this note on play in general and kind of my thoughts around what the author was saying and what Andy was saying as well. And then I started to relate it to what I'm interested in. I'm not really a designer and I'm not really that interested in that space, but I am interested in how I can bring in things from design into my interests and my work. So I then started thinking about the concept of exploratory testing as play. The idea of breaking the rules a little bit and then just being able to play with an application with the goal of improving its quality. So I wrote this note on exploratory testing, which related play and testing. And then just to follow it up and kind of talk through my own thoughts about it, I set up a live stream for work on K6 Office Hours where I talk about exploratory testing with another colleague of mine. I'm just trying to show you the process of how an idea sparks a bunch of different things that ends up with me learning and being able to share it with other people. Principle number 2 sounds like it's in direct opposition to the first one, and that's to make it stressful, but in a good way. My favorite way to do this is to set a deadline for myself, and it's better if you're committing to it in front of other people. Not too long ago, I wanted to learn about chaos engineering. I'd never run a chaos experiment, and I didn't exactly know what that entailed. So rather than just putting it on the list to learn for later and then forgetting about it because nobody ever has time to go through those lists, I actually applied to speak at a conference about chaos engineering 3 months before. Was that bold? Yes, and here's how I managed to talk myself into it. I think authenticity is going to be a big part of this. I am never going to apply to speak at a conference and say, I'm an expert in this subject. I have so much experience. In this presentation, I was pretty open about the fact that this was from the point of view of a new chaos engineer. And I think that when you package it that way and you're 100% honest with people when they accept your talk, then it's like just giving you the motivation to go out and do it. And do it I did. So I ended up learning quite a bit from that actually. And then I got to document it in a presentation. So there was a very definitive timeline when I had to get all of this done and then be able to communicate it somehow in a coherent way. Another example of this is that I took my friend Zolt Witsian's visual thinking workshop. Zolt is the developer of Excalidraw and the Excalibrain Obsidian plugins, and his visual thinking workshop entailed selecting a book with a group and then being able to make visual summaries out of them in the end, in what he calls a book on a page. My problem was that I didn't finish that workshop live. I did finish it later, but I completely overestimated how much I'd be able to do with family around. This is over the Christmas period as well. So I was left in this state of not really knowing whether I was even going to finish the book and then whether I was going to process the book. The book that my cohort chose was called Emergence, which I really enjoyed, but just to get me that extra bit of motivation, I again applied to speak about it, relating it directly to my field. I applied to speak at a conference with a talk called Emergent Load Testing. What does that mean? I'm honestly not sure and kind of freaking out about it because it's in April. By the way, if you're planning to go to KubeCon EU, I'm going to be in Amsterdam speaking about emergent load testing, so maybe I'll have a better idea of what I'm going to talk about then. So again, the same thing, forcing myself to learn something that I know I am interested in and could be really useful for me. I read it, I have the Readwise highlights, I created the notes, and then just to encourage myself to deepen the learning, I pre-committed myself to speak about it. Principle number 3 is to make it public because I really think that this is the best way to learn. I purposely cultivate avenues for me learning in public. An example of this is me publishing my Obsidian notes. There are many ways to do it because Obsidian notes are held in Markdown, so a lot of these static site generators are going to work for those purposes. But I just chose the easiest route and the way that also supports the developers of Obsidian, which is Obsidian Publish. So if you'd like to see my notes, most of them are available online at notes.nicolevanderhoeven.com. They are messy. I mean, they're notes, right? They're not blog posts, they're not articles, or it's not like some thesis. You know what you're going to be getting. And that's part of cultivating these avenues that are like designated for you to learn in public on. You need to set expectations that people are not going to get polished things, so that they're not disappointed when they don't get it. On my Obsidian Publish, I also put the notes from various courses that I've taken, like these are my notes for the Course Master YouTube, and then I kind of abstracted those thoughts and ideas out into a producing videos notes. I also publish all of my highlights from books that I've recently read via Readwise. I don't really know if it's useful for anybody else, but it's useful for me. And sometimes that prompts people to message me and make suggestions or correct certain things that they see, which is only a positive thing. Another avenue for me is Mastodon. If you don't know, Mastodon is like a new social network like Twitter, but better because it's federated. I won't get into it now, but my friend Marcus Olson and Marcus is on the Obsidian team, and he is also the developer behind Obsidian projects. He and I own and manage a Mastodon instance, like a server of Mastodon, called PKM Social. It's totally free to join. It's a bunch of people who love PKM, and, we talk about other things too, but one thing we have in common is PKM. PKM Social is the place where I am most likely to just quickly type something up, and I use the hashtag TIL, which means today I learned. And I try to do it as often as I can. I would love to do it every day. But the idea is to just keep putting things out there of sometimes very insignificant things that I've learned, just to kind of be accountable to other people a little bit as well. And sometimes what I've learned helps other people. Sometimes what I've learned wrong, and that's useful too, right? Another of these avenues for me is live streams. I do this at work. It's called K6 Office Hours. It's a live stream that I do weekly, and it's about load testing, reliability, software development. And then I do it on this channel too, where I sometimes talk to other developers or to people within the Obsidian community. And the thing that they have in common is because it's live, it is pretty much just me interviewing people that know better than me about something. I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes people think I'm doing it for others, which is very noble. And yes, I am very happy that I can share that with people. But honestly, a lot of it is me learning and being able to ask questions to people who are just so much smarter than me. And the fourth way is through these videos. I'm learning just like you are. I love Obsidian and I hope that passion comes through, but that's also why I never want to say this is the only way to do it, because I just don't feel confident in saying that. I think I'm always changing how I do things, but having a video to put forward into the world and say, hey, this is currently what I think of this subject. What do you all think? I think that's a very powerful thing. When I first joined the current company that I worked for, one thing that I did was to release a video every day. I called it the week of testing, and it was basically just me screen recording as I was trying out the digital tools that my company builds and talking through like what I found intuitive and just trying to figure it out. And that series did pretty well, despite the fact that I wasn't speaking from any level of expertise. I was a complete beginner. I think that there is something about learning in public that is just very genuine, and people like genuine. Every now and then people will ask me how I release the content that I do, both in my professional and personal lives. And I don't really think of things as content. Maybe that's the difference. I think of it more as learning exhaust. When you're learning in public, the things that you do that lead to the thing that you're learning to build or whatever it is end up creating visible exhaust. That's actually a good thing. Learning exhaust is like the cookie crumb trail that anybody can follow to get to where you are. A very good and very cringy example of this is me learning how to make YouTube videos in the first place. I know that maybe you've only seen this channel, but this is actually like the 4th channel that I've made videos on and the most successful. What you don't see is the hundreds of videos I made before starting this channel, and they were not good. If you want to see the very first video that I released to YouTube, check this out. It's super cringy. It is on the travel vlog that I used to maintain called Lucky Dippers. The editing is bad. The music is bad. I barely spoke to the camera. It was just like pictures and zooming in, and it was just really, really bad. But I leave it up there because, you know what? It's where I came from, and if you can see the differences and the progress through the videos that I've created through my learning exhaust, I think that's a good thing. It's kind of like proof of progress. Some of the videos on this channel are learning exhaust in themselves. Like if you check out this video where I talk about taking my notes from the book The Culture Map, there are a lot of things that I make in that video. The video itself, my notes about the book, an atomic essay which I posted to Twitter, a short slide presentation that I made in Obsidian and then recorded a video on in the video, and then I also made a small drawing in Excalidraw. So lots of those like different assets, I guess you could call it, that all reinforce the same idea. You can also check out this video where I talk about how I keep up with tech trends. This is my attempt to learn more about eBPF. I also made a presentation on it and then a video for work, as well as this video on this channel. So this is how you can start to see like the things that you're learning don't need to be hidden, and then the only thing that you put out there is like the finished or polished result. It's much more interesting and dynamic to just put things out there as you go. Let people see the exhaust. Another thing about putting things in public is the accountability. When you publicly announce that you're going to do something, it's pretty embarrassing if you don't do it. This was how I got to do my course. I released a course called Obsidian for Everyone. You can check it out here. And it is basically a compilation of all of the questions that people have asked me about how to get started with Obsidian. Because I'm aware that on this channel, I usually talk about more advanced topics and plugins. This course is like beginners only, basics, but really the foundations of anything else. I still think you don't need any more plugins than the core plugins that are on there. I announced that and then I had to deliver. And let me tell you, it was difficult. I had never done it before. I think I could have done things better. I always think I can do things better though, but you know, done is better than perfect, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about it. Another thing that I announced most recently, a few weeks ago, is that I'm writing a book. It's going to be called The Obsidian Playbook, and I love so much that I've already gotten so many comments about plugins to try, techniques to consider, like different tools that I could use, or suggestions for content. That is exactly what you get if you put it out there that you're going to be doing something. People respond, and the end result is better learning and better quality of whatever you're creating for everybody. I've found that when you reframe productivity as learning, as play, then you may find yourself being more productive almost as a byproduct, and you'll have more fun doing it. If you'd like to learn more about how to create things that are actually useful with your notes, then check out this video of a presentation that I did that walks you through that process. I'm also leaving links to all of the learning exhaust I've created and mentioned in this video in the hopes of inspiring you to seek out different ways of learning that are more fun, more stressful, and more public. Thanks for watching.